So, um, I forgot how many years ago this was now. Probably about 2.5 or 3 years ago. We had John Waterhouse come. John is the president of the United Centers for Spiritual Living, and he worked all day with the practitioners. We actually had more than one practitioner. Then they all hadn't moved away, and the board, and we came up with a mission statement and a vision statement for the center. And I wanted to start today by reading for you the vision statement that we came up with. Here it is. We come together to celebrate life through spiritual connection and growth. And for today, for me, the part that stands out is the spiritual connection part. You know, when we have a community that gives us spiritual support, we grow as individuals, but we also grow together in a bigger way as a group. And so for us here, when we have the two book groups that we do on Tuesday and Thursday, and the Course in Miracles, and the Wednesday night life enrichment, those really, if we look at them in a deeper way, they're opportunities for us to come together in love and support for one another and support for the center. So I was moved this week to look up the word belongingness in Wikipedia. And this is how Wikipedia defines the word belongingness: an emotional need to be an accepted member of a group, something greater than ourselves, to give and receive affection from others. The desire to belong is so universal, it is found across all cultures and all types of people. So, I mean, that really says how much of a need all of us have. And so I read something this week I thought really kind of put it out there for me. It was a short little thing by a woman who belongs to a group of women that run, and they run every day. And she said in this article, she said, that's my community. And she said, since we've come together, we have members who have lost loved ones. We have members who have been divorced. We have members who have gotten tattoos. We have members that have cried because their hearts are broken. We have members that change jobs. We have members that change diapers. We have members that change the color of their hair. But one thing remains: the run. And she said, we grimace and we groan and we sweat, not very ladylike, but that's what's important. That's our community. And she ended it, she said, I get up in the dark because these are my women. This is my community, and I know they're waiting for me. And that's just a running group. Compare that to a spiritual community. And so I don't know if everybody knows this, but I run. And I used to live in Maine. And so this story really grabbed me, because when I lived in Maine, you can imagine what it feels like to get up in the middle of the night in Maine when it's like below zero and go for a run. It's something everybody wants to do. And, but I actually did it. But then one of the gym teachers at the high school made it be known that she would open up the high school gym at, I think it was 5:45 in the morning, 4 times a week for people to run. And so 3 of us in our development banded together, and that was our little group. And so I can understand why this woman was so enthralled by her group, because all of a sudden running, and it's the only time in my life that it did too. I've never run a race in all the time I've run. It's my time. But all of a sudden it became more than that, because if I wasn't ready, I was disappointing my two buddies. It wasn't just about me. And when it was my turn to drive, I could have been dying, but I would have not said I can't do it today. It just becomes something that's bigger than we are. We're committed to something that's beyond ourselves, something that's greater than we are. You know, when we have a community behind us, we can feel more secure, because we know that there are other people that really care about us and care about what kind of progress we're making in life. So Eric Butterworth talks a little bit about community, and he said, you know, so often, so many of us want other people, to meet our standards and our expectations. And when they don't, we either cut them loose or we try to change them. And he said, you know, being different isn't wrong. Being different doesn't mean that you're wrong. It just means that you're different. And he said that the idea that as you give, so shall you receive has more to do than with finances. It has to do with our relationships too. What we put into a relationship is what we get out of the relationship. And also, when we treat people, perhaps not as they come across to us, not as they seem, but if we treat them like we really know they are in their hearts and in their soul, he said, it does wonders to help them see themselves that way too. And that's something else that we can do in spiritual community. I know I have stopped, you know, with the book groups. There are days with the book groups when somebody might take up a ton of airtime, or take us on a trip to Phoenix when we wanted to go to Los Angeles, you know. And I have stopped coming home and telling Becky that happened, because I always get the same answer back, which is not what I want to hear. What I want is somebody to sympathize, and instead what I hear is, well, they're your teacher. What are they trying to teach you? And it's true, but it also is another way of focusing us to look on somebody and say, you know, I'm not perfect either, so I need to say, all right, I accept you wherever you are, and it's okay. It's okay to be who you are. And Butterworth said, he asked the question, am I my brother's keeper? And he said, absolutely not. You don't have a right to be anybody's keeper. I'm my brother's brother, or my sister's sister. And doesn't that put it in a different light, you know? And so when we talk about community, or go back and read about it, one of the things that's always fascinating to me is how many, well, I said at the beginning from Wikipedia, how many cultures, it crosses cultures, how many, I don't think you could find a religion that doesn't talk about community. You know, I just talked about Butterworth, who's New Thought. Well, Lama Surya Das is a Buddhist, and he wrote about it too, and he said, you know, seekers need spiritual friends. And the term that the Buddhists use for this is Sangha. And Sangha is a Sanskrit word that means community or gathering. And I saw a lot of different definitions of it, but the one that I personally like best this week was from Jack Kornfield, who's a wonderful Buddhist teacher. And his definition is, he said, Sangha means spiritual community, and it's treasured because without it, awakening cannot be sustained. And that really spoke to me, because I think what he's saying, you know, you could take classes and courses and do whatever, but if you're doing everything on your own and you go back out and you're by yourself, it's really easy to get caught up in the world. to get caught up in your everyday life and everything that's going on in it. So unless you're living in a cave and meditating all the time, it's really easy to be distracted. And what happens when we're in spiritual community, it's a way to not let ourselves be as distracted because we have people there reminding us. It's a way of deepening ourselves. And I know Becky and I usually teach the foundation class together. I don't know how many times we've taught it together. And I know every single time we've ever finished a foundation class, when we talk about it, we say, I think we got as much out of it as they did. And when we go back and read, as we're doing the readings, read in the Science of Mind textbook, I don't think I've ever had a time where I didn't think to myself, when did that paragraph get in there? I've read this 20 times and I've never seen that in this chapter. So that's what he's talking about. That's the way we sustain it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what we can get from spiritual community. I want to talk about 4 things we can get. And the first one I've kind of skirted. It's a way of helping us maintain what our priorities are. So probably none of us haven't had a day when we felt lazy, when maybe didn't want to meditate, or if you're taking a class, said, heck with it, I'm not going tonight, or if you're in a group like the Course in Miracles, or one of the book groups, you say, I'm skipping today. And it happens, I know this never happens, or on a Sunday say, I don't want to get up today. I know that's like, doesn't happen. But spiritual friends are there to remind us about what's important in our life. To say, hey, maybe taking a day off isn't as important as attending. They kind of help us keep on track, like I mentioned with the running groups. And another thing that spiritual community can give us is mentors and elders. There's probably, if you're having an issue in your life, there's a good chance that somebody else in that group might have experienced the same thing and might have wrestled with it. And not only can they give you advice, but perhaps really practical advice. It says, here's how I dealt with it. Here's a fabulous book I read when I was going through that. Or I heard about this teacher and I went and it was great. Why don't you take a look and do this workshop or whatever it is. And we can learn by watching and seeing their example. After I got all done with preparing everything, a minister friend of mine named Jane Beach put something on Facebook that kind of talked about, she said, the first to help you up are the ones who know what it feels like to have been down. And that's a way a mentor can help. Then a third way is a spiritual community can give us a safe place to share. We know we can open up and talk about our feelings, and somebody isn't going to be making fun of us or laughing or teasing. A place where people will accept us for who we are, with all of our hopes, with all of our fears, with all of our faults. They're willing to say, okay, we accept you. It's a safe place to let down your guard. And I don't know how many times we've said to people, any of the classes that we teach, the stuff that we teach is okay, but the sharing is what really makes it deep and really binds people together as we sit there and listen to how other people have dealt with issues or what's going on in other people's minds. And the last thing is a spiritual community can surround us with sacred energy. And if there's anybody here that's ever meditated in a group, you know what I mean. It's nice to meditate alone, but when you meditate in a group, there's like a whole nother energy that comes in. It's like a feeling of touching something greater than we are. And I thought, maybe that's what Jesus meant when he said, where 2 or 3 of you are gathered in my name, I am there among you. So William Isaacs is a person who is He's a lecturer at MIT, and he's a business consultant. And he has a book that he wrote that talks about connection. And he tells a story in there that one time he was asked to give a speech in the Silicon Valley to a whole group of executives. And when his speech was done, they asked him if he would meet separately with a group of 25 CEOs and executive vice presidents. And when he thought about what he was going to do, he thought, well, I don't want to do another speech. And I really don't want to do another Q&A. I've done so many of them. So he asked the group, now this is, any of you that ever worked in a corporation can really get this. He asked a group of CEOs and executive VPs to form a circle. And he said, what I want to do, I want to go around and I want to have a check-in, all right? So any of you that have taken classes with Becky and I, we always start every class with a check-in. But basically, he asked them to talk about their thoughts and their feelings at the moment, which is something that every CEO and executive VP does all the time. And so he said the first couple of guys did very perfunctory things, like comment that it was really different to sit in a circle. And the third or fourth person got up and he said, hey, I know what this is all about. He said, let me tell you a story. Last summer, I took my 2 teenage sons on a camping trip. And I never knew if they liked it or not, because they complained a lot. We don't have our music. We miss our friends. We don't have our computers. So he never knew if they really got into the spirit of what he was trying to do. And he said, months later, one of them came to him and he said, hey, Dad, remember that camping trip we took? And he said, yeah. And he said, you want to know what I liked best? And he said, tell me. And he said, what I liked best was at night when we all sat around the campfire and talked. And Isaac said that changed the entire tenor of the check-in. That he said they went around and some people told really simple stories and some people told more involved ones. Some of the people asked really deep questions, and some of them shared about the struggles they were having in their companies or in their personal lives. He said somehow they understood the opportunity they had in that moment to reflect, and maybe even more importantly, to be heard. To be heard. And he said they spent the rest of the evening just going around that circle because they couldn't think of anything more important that they could do. You know, it was an opportunity for them to move beyond their everyday conversations and really, really go deep. And this morning, when I was looking my notes over again, it reminded me of something that Becky and I experienced. When I was the assistant minister at the Seal Beach Church in Southern California, I did the service one Sunday, and after the service, I was doing a workshop, and it was a workshop that I had attended that was incredibly deep. It was about doing healing, particularly if you had a conflict with somebody. And there was a woman who nobody knew. She had showed up that day. It was the first time she ever came to the service. And when I described the workshop, she decided to come, which was pretty gutsy when you don't know anybody else. And the person tells you in advance, if you're not willing to go deep, don't come to the workshop because we want to go deep. And one of the things that we do is you write a letter to the person, and it's a loving letter. And we sit in the circle after the letters are written and give people the opportunity to read their letters if they choose to. And this woman chose to. Now, it turned out Becky and I are really great friends with her and her husband. She's Mexican-American, and she was born here, but her mom wasn't. And the person she was having a conflict with was her mother. And so she said to us, I want to read my letter And I speak and write English fluently, but my mother doesn't. So I'm going to read my letter in Spanish. And she read her letter in Spanish. And there were periods when she would break up. And what was so fascinating was, so did the group. Nobody there knew what she was saying. None of us spoke Spanish. But we have this connection. When we talk about being one, boy, that really showed it to me. We didn't know anything she was saying, but when she got done, everybody in the group was crying along with her because we could feel her sorrow and we could feel her hurt at not having talked to her mother for years. And it just spoke to me of how important it is to be able to have the opportunity to do that and to reflect, as Isaac said, but to really be heard, and how you don't even have to know what the person is saying to just feel along with them. And Isaac, in this chapter in his book, he ended it, he said, learning to inquire together about what matters most is some of the most significant work I can imagine. That's coming from a business consultant, not a minister or a priest, a business consultant saying that's the most significant work that he can imagine. So I told you it's in so many religions. So Harold Kushner is a rabbi. Some of you might have read some of his books. And right after the tragedy, the bombing in OKC, in Oklahoma City years ago, he was there a few weeks after. And he said he asked a lot of people, he said to them, what helped you to most bear the burden? And he said, unanimously, he got the same answers from people that he spoke to. He said almost everyone said it was the outpouring of support from friends and strangers. The validation that we were worth caring about. He said that understanding made their losses easier to bear, because people need to be loved and supported. And he said, in life, you can't make somebody love you, but we have the power, all of us, to give love away. We can love somebody else. And he said, and when we do that, when we love somebody else, we change the kind of person that we are, and we change the world. We change the world. So Ernest Holmes wrote that he thought that Jesus implies that no one can enter the kingdom of heaven without desiring to take others with them. And the reason he came to that is, he said, because listen to what Jesus said. He said, I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me to drink. I was a stranger and you took me in naked and clothed me. I was sick and you visited me. I was in prison and you came unto me. And Holmes said to him, what that says is that the kingdom of God, which he invites us to, includes everybody. It includes everyone. In fact, Holmes called it the kingdom of good, where nobody is excluded. And for me, again, that speaks to spiritual community. Michael Beckwith, in his book Spiritual Liberation, says that in order to be a part of everybody's spiritual strategy, to wake up every day and ask themselves, how can I give of myself today? How can I give of myself today? He said, think of how you can share your time, your energy, your talent, your skills, and even your financial resources with other people. And he said, if you do that, see how your heart becomes as wide as the world. So I started out by reading our vision. So I want to do it again. So here's the vision that we came up with working with John Waterhouse. We come together to celebrate life through spiritual connection and growth. And, you know, when I was thinking about that, obviously Sundays are a part of that, but so are all the other activities, like I said before, you know, the workshops, the book groups, the concerts, whatever it is that we offer. And when Becky and I came here, our idea then and now is that we want to create a powerful spiritual community. But we can only do that if we all make the choice to come together and to support one another. So I just invite you to think about that and to maybe make the decision to dip your foot in the water a little bit deeper, to come not just on Sundays, but to some of our other events, so together we can build a really strong and meaningful Sangha. So I want to close with something that was written by a lady named Amy Skirvin, and she titled it, "Underneath, We're All the Same." He prayed. It wasn't my religion. He ate. It wasn't what I ate. He spoke. It wasn't my language. He dressed. It wasn't what I wore. He took my hand. It wasn't the color of mine.